Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June 17th special meeting of the Escondido City Council. Roll call, I can see that we have all our, the whole council is here. And Zach, do we have any oral communications?
Yes, we have 2 oral communications for this item.
All right, thank you.
First is from Maria Wallace, and she says the following. Mr. Morosco, I read your op-ed in the Times Advocate last week. This is my response. Escondido has a history of racism. 24 years ago, when I was 26, I lived in your district. During a morning walk at Kit Carson Park, a young white male, a student from San Pasqual High School, approached me and spit on my face. I did nothing to deserve this kind of assault. This has not been the only racist situation I encountered. A few months ago, my husband, a retired Navy veteran, was driving in Escondido when a car pulled up alongside him and a white male shouted, "Go back to Mexico." The incidents occurred decades apart and clearly show that racism is deeply entrenched in our community. I want you to know that racism exists in Escondido. My experiences are fact. Our next public comment is from Aisha Wallace Palomares and says the following. My name is Aisha Wallace Palomares. I am a resident of Escondido. I am here to voice my support for defunding the EPD and to reallocate those funds towards community recreation, community care and social services, and the public library. I am disappointed that this fiscal year's budget was already confirmed, but this is my hope for the future. The police institution has its roots in slave patrols. It is a matter of historical fact that this institution is anti-black. Action must be taken. According to the budget for fiscal year 2019, the police department received 43% of the total city budget, $45,928,260. That is $6 million increase from 2016. The EPD was allocated $422,480 in safety equipment and maintenance. Money from there goes to riot gear, which includes tear gas, rubber bullets, beanbag rounds, shields, etc. Only 6% of the budget is allocated for public works, another 8% community services, and barely 4% in community development. Let's invest in healing our community, not funding trauma. Mr. Morosco, your op-ed was preposterous last week. As one of color, I can attest that, yes, I stand in support of reform based on my personal experiences that are echoed across communities of color. Experiences of racism that bring out sentiment. Sentiment is fact. Your op-ed was counterproductive. My father, a Navy vet, just 6 months ago was driving in our city and a white man rolled down his window and yelled, "Go back to Mexico." In school, I heard people routinely say the N-word. Racism occurs routinely in Escondido. These are not isolated incidents. In 2006, the City Council passed an unconstitutional anti-immigrant housing ordinance. In 2018, the City Council voted 4-1 to file a legal brief in support of Donald Trump's lawsuit against California, a clear endorsement by this municipality of President's anti-immigrant agenda. I was there, I even spoke at the meeting, and the City Council paid more attention to racists from Arizona than to their own constituency. I am still hurt by the hate speech I heard in chambers that day, but I am proud of the courage Councilmember Diaz showed. The City of Escondido's police department has a legacy of engendering fear in its community. In 2012, an ACLU study found that the Escondido from 2004 to 2012, the police had used checkpoints to enrich their funding through vehicle impoundments and detain and deport undocumented members of the community. I participated in many of these checkpoints and worked closely with the police department from 2009-2018. What I, along with other members of the community, is not radical as reform that is needed to be made for a long time. No more public comments on this item.
Thank you. As I think we all know, today we're talking about we're doing the Joint City Council Board and Commission interviews. We did do, back in March 18th, I believe, we did interviews for Library Board of Trustees, Building and Advisory Appeals Board, Transportation and Community Safety Commission, as well as the Public Art Commission. Today we're going to be interviewing applicants for the Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, and 2 more what we'll call makeup interviews for the Public Art Commission. At the end of this, I'm going to ask the City Council members to send me their list, and I will consolidate them to try to get consensus as to who you think should be on these various commissions. Zach has sent out, and I just want to make sure, an update of what I think he calls the title of Board and Commissions interviews, and it has the list of names and all of that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure if you haven't looked at your email recently, he just sent it out
Around 3 o'clock.
Around 3 o'clock. So if you haven't seen it, he's got that list, and you can take a look at it. The other thing is, in terms of format, I'm just kind of do like we did the last time. all of you kind of ask one question, and we'll kind of just keep rotating around until we're satisfied with the questions. And if you ask a question, you want to do a short follow-up, that's okay. But I'd rather not have one person ask 10 questions and then there's nothing left for the other council members to ask. Okay, so there's kind of the ground rules, but we have flexibility in those as well. So with that, I think we'll start with the Planning Commission. And the first person up is James Spahn, okay, who is an incumbent. James, are you on there? I see you.
I am here.
And,
Yes, Mayor.
Mike, I'm going to ask you to start the round of questions, okay? Of interview.
Okay. Appreciate the opportunity. Hope everyone can hear, see us. We can see you. Good seeing you, Jim. Want to thank you for the years that you have put into the Planning Commission. If you can just tell me what you would consider some of the more salient points and the highlights of your service on the Planning Commission, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I would say seeing a lot of faith organizations build has been a incredible outcome. As far as downtown, we're seeing the new vintage church go in over there, and that's going to be a big boost to downtown. I couldn't really pick out anything in particular other than personally, one of my biggest victories was to see and it didn't happen at the Planning Commission level, it happened at the council level, was the defeat of that big building that was going to be built on the parking lot right across from City Hall. That was not what the citizens wanted. Beyond that, highlights of recently, Commissioner Weiler and I, the city sent us to Sacramento for some training, and that was 3 days of training. That was very informative, and I think the day we got back is when the lockdown started, and we had 700 people in a banquet room up there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Olga? Do you have a question?
I do, and I'm sorry, Mayor, on my screen, for the council chambers, I only see a B for broadcast. I don't see you when you speak, but I'll proceed. Thank you so much, Jim, for your service these many, many years. I'd like to know, as for many years I've sort of hinted at, and maybe not even so subtly, that Planning Commission meetings should be live broadcast very similar to the way that City Council meetings are. And I'd like to know your perspective on whether you would support that change, and also how you think you could better engage the public in participating in Planning Commission meetings. Because as you know from your experience, we often don't get a crowd until there's a problem. So if you have any ideas to share that are different, that would be great. Or would you at least support the televising of Planning Commission meetings so a broader audience could watch them live or later as part of a library?
If you had asked me that question a month ago, I would say I don't want to televise it only because it's something new. But after the meeting, I was pretty confident that it wasn't a disaster for the first time ever, and I have no problems televising. I think more people ought to know what's going on. And with regards to the second part of your question, one of the seminars at this training was how to better engage the public in coming out to Planning Commission meetings. It's a meeting where nobody wants to look at the documents, nobody wants to spend the time out there, nobody wants to talk about it unless you have a problem. We're trying to make, and haven't had the opportunity since we've been in lockdown since, but trying to make the Planning Commission meetings more comfortable for people, friendlier. I've made it a point that people have every opportunity to speak. We've never turned anybody down, even when the timer was going. If I let people go over, I don't think anybody could honestly say that they were denied their ability to express themselves in the planning commission meeting. And we've had some good meetings. I would like to see more people there. It's a little disheartening to see nobody in the audience.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to Consuelo.
Thank you. Mayor, I had a quick question before I ask my question. I know in the previous round of interviews, we were, the candidates were able to give like a 1-minute kind of opening pitch. Are we going to allow, will that be happening today with these candidates?
Yeah, we are doing it. You're bringing out a good point, Consuelo. I think on the last time we did this, the candidates were given a 1-minute, kind of like you said, an opening pitch, and then the other candidates did not hear the answers of the candidates. But due to the technology here, everyone's going to hear, the last person who called will hear everyone's answer to the same question. But I'm willing to go back to James. Would you like to give a 1 minute? I think I'm okay with that.
Thank you. And then I can ask a question just based on whatever, I'd like to hear what he has to say, and then I'll follow up a question. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, that's kind of catching me off guard, but as far as 1 minute, I've been in Escondido since 1976 and involved in what happens at City Hall. I'm probably the only one of the pictures that I'm looking at that's been in the old City Hall building, the old fire department building that was torn down. I am concerned about what happens. My degree is in design, and when the design review board was combined with the planning commission, it gave me an in as far as I do know my way around design enough to know what looks good and what doesn't look good, and what will benefit the city for years to come. It's taken a while to really get educated as far as how the meetings work, and I think that we do have some real good meetings. I think you'd all be better off if you were to see them on TV, or at least see them.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask my question. So, being that you've served for a few years now, what are your reasons for wanting to continue to serve, and what are some of your what are you looking forward to if you do get reappointed?
Well, I believe if it's not broken, you don't fix it, and everything is moving very smoothly right now. Like I say, it's taken a while to really get the flow down. I know every inch of this town. I've worked houses. I know people. I know what they want. Get people calling me to ask about different projects. I feel like the city as a whole will benefit. The citizens will benefit by my input.
Thank you.
I see no reason to not pursue reappointment.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for you. If you could wave a magic wand and change either the structure or the scope of the Planning Commission, considering that it's part of our land management structure, and which is becoming more and more important as we move forward, what would you like to see changed?
I don't really know what I'd like to see changed in the future. I think that it functions perfectly as an advisory board. Recently, a lot of the things that we were tasked with have been taken out of our jurisdiction and put into the staff's hands. So the things that come to the Planning Commission are things that probably do have a little bit more public interest. And like you say, if people have a problem, they come out and talk about it. I would like, if I could wave a magic wand and see something changed, it would be people coming out and wanting to be at the meeting and wanting to have positive input about projects. I can't really see, I think it's functioning very well right now, to be honest.
I'm going to do that short follow-up. I believe that the council as a whole is looking to get more engagement from the community on all the things that we do, more input, more of their feedback, and things like that. So especially so that you don't find out at the last minute that it comes across that some backdoor deal was done. Do you have any ideas of how we might be able to engage more of the community?
From a planning perspective or from the council perspective?
Well, I'm open to both, but let's start with the planning.
Well, the notices are up there. People drive by. I mean, I stop and look at notices to see what in particular is, they say as far as what's coming up. As far as involvement from the community, I don't know if we could put something on the agenda that was uplifting or something that really is just a little bit of a sugar on the meeting to attract people. But I think basically to get people out and involved, everybody is so busy that unless it's an absolute critical meeting, they're not going to take part. I think the Planning Commission, though, if it was televised, would certainly increase the interest and probably bring people out to the chambers.
Okay. With that, I'll return to you, Mike. You have another question you'd like to ask?
Well, the guys vacuuming here in my room just finished, so I can turn my microphone back on. But no, I'm good to go right now. Thank you very much, Mr. Spahn. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Olga, would you like to ask?
No.
You're good?
No, but I do want to thank you, Jimmy, for all of your work and all the years that you've been downtown and involved. I've watched you contribute significantly to our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consuelo?
No additional questions. Thank you.
All right, and I don't have any either. Thank you, Jimmy. With that, we'll move on to Rebel Bolton. And Olga, would you mind starting the question?
Sure. Where is Rebel? Well, do we want to let her introduce herself first?
Good point. Thank you. Rebel, how about your 1 minute intro? Rebel, can you hear me okay?
Mayor, the Rebel is not connected into this meeting.
She is not.
No.
Okay. Then we will move on to Stan Wheeler. Stan, why don't you start with your...
Sure. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for this opportunity to participate in this interview process. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Escondido. I grew up here, went through elementary school, junior high and high school, graduating from Orange Glen, going all through the public school system. Furthered my education out at Palomar College and ultimately graduating from San Diego State. I love the city, got married, had a daughter, raised her here as well. She went through the public school system and ultimately graduating from San Marcos. So I've got a long history here in the city, and I've thoroughly enjoyed being part of this city. I played youth sports here. I coached my daughter's soccer teams here. I've also went on to play sports in the adult leagues. And so I really enjoy being a part of this city, and I want to further continue my service to the city by staying with the Planning Commission. I think I bring a unique...
you're at your 1 minute.
Okay.
All right, thank you. With that, Olga, would you lead off the questioning, please?
Sure, thank you. Stan, if you want more than 1 minute, you have to run for office. So I want to thank you for your service and your commitment to our community. My question to you will be the same as it was to Jimmy. How do you feel about broadcasting Planning Commission meetings as part of a standard operating procedure and to engage more people? Do you think that that is something that you could support? Or if you have a better idea, I'd like to hear that.
No, Planning Commission meetings and public hearings as a whole is vital to get the input from the community. And if we can do anything more that can enhance that, I'm always for that. So televising the Planning Commission hearings, I would not have a problem with that. I think it'd be a benefit, and so I would support that.
Okay, thank you. Move on to Consuelo.
Thank you. Stan, I would like to know, as far, I know that you're a land use and planning consultant. Have you had instances where you've had to recuse yourself from any votes on the planning commission? And if so, how many times?
Yes, I've had to recuse myself a total of 3 times. One time was just because I lived in close proximity to one of the projects that was coming before the commission, and then there were 2 others. They just happened to be clients of mine, and so my clients didn't have a problem, of course, and neither did I as far as recusing myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Stan, I'm going to go back to my original question as well. I'm always looking for process improvement, so again, if you had the magic wand, what do you think you would change or improve on the Planning Commission?
Well, again, like I said before, I think public participation is extremely important. So the more that we can get the word out to the community on changes that are being proposed, I think that's good. There was an occasion one time at a Planning Commission hearing where we were getting input from the public that seemed to be a bit contradictory to some of the input that we were getting from staff. And so one of the recommendations that I made at that hearing, and the Planning Commission went along with that, was to continue the hearing for 2 weeks so that we could make sure that we got additional input from the public just to ensure that every voice was heard. And that goes along with televising. I think that would be helpful. It gives people the opportunity to see how the Planning Commission responds and reviews projects and provides a recommendation to the City Council for those projects that go forward. The only other thing that I would not mind happening, and I'm sure all the planning commissioners can do it on their own, but that might be meeting with staff ahead of a hearing if there are some detailed questions that they have, so that they can have clarity during the hearing itself. But that would be about it. I agree with Commissioner Span. I think things are operating really well.
Okay. And beyond television, do you have any other ideas for engaging the public?
Well, again, it's just putting notification out to the public in the various mediums that we have. There's social media that's out there. I think the city does a really good job because I get emails, several times a week from the city that's providing us updates to what's going on. So I think the city's done a really good job as of late in getting information out to the citizens, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Stan. With Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Stan, again for your years of service and for all that you do. I believe Jim had mentioned you had the opportunity to go up to Sacramento for some recent training. Any particular highlights or gems that you guys were able to discover while you were up there that are pertinent to you and that you are perhaps looking forward to seeing happen here in Escondido?
Absolutely. Because of my background and my involvement in different cities as a consultant, I've had the opportunity to attend a lot of city council and planning commission hearings. But there was one session in that the participants, the ones that were given the session, had a mock planning commission hearing. And it showed what I think, how sideways certain groups of people can get when they have differing views and differing backgrounds in how they participated in the planning commission process. And what I found was that as sideways as things could get in the public hearing process, I think the planning commission that I've been involved with over the past 4 years has been extremely conscious of giving respect to one another while we are all up at the dais. And I think that's helpful, and I think that's a testament to the staff and their professionalism, as well as the folks that were selected to be on planning commission. So that was one of the highlights that really stood out.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
With that, I'll move back to you. Olga, do you have any other questions?
No, no further questions. Thank you.
Consuelo?
I do. I just thought about this, and I wish I would have asked James this. Since you're an incumbent, Stan, what perspective would you say is missing currently from the Planning Commission?
Well, that's a good question. Because of the time that I've spent on there, and I've seen, a few planning commissioners come and go, I think that everybody that's been on there that I've seen has been very good. I think they've been thoughtful. I think they've been very well prepared. So I don't know what other perspective. Now, I have noticed that, it happens to be that we are all male. So maybe a female coming on, or multiple, it doesn't really matter to me. That's a different perspective. But I think that everybody that's been selected that I've been with has been very good.
Thank you, Stan.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Mike, do you have any further questions?
No, sir, I'm good to go.
All right. Then thank you very much, Stan, for your service and for applying once again. With that, we'll move on to Ingrid and Consuelo. I'm sorry. Ingrid, would you mind giving us your 1 minute intro, please?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Ingrid Rainey. I hope I'm not pausing because everybody else pauses when they speak on my screen, but I'm in litigation. I specifically do it in business and employment law, as well as transactional work in property and business. So I live in Escondido. My husband and I bought our first home here. Love living here, and I'm very excited to be interviewing for this position.
And Ingrid, you did come across smoothly, as did all the other applicants, at least to those of us in the council chambers. With that, would you mind starting off with your question?
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. So being that you do not currently serve on a board of commission, could you tell me a little bit more about your specific interest in the Planning Commission?
Absolutely. Since I do transactional work specifically in property law, just the aspect that I read rules and regulations all day long, I think that it would be a nice new perspective to add on this. And definitely with my background doing law for more than a decade, obviously I'm invested in the city. I live here, I have a home here, and we chose to move here. So it's just to ensure that our city goes in the right direction and follows rules and regulations, but at the same time looks at the totality of the circumstances and the opinions of our residents and make decisions accordingly.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, Ingrid, I would like to ask you the same question. As you look at and you can tell, I'm always looking for process improvement. I'd ask you, as you review the Planning Commission board, and I've observed it, what would you do to change it? And you could even put in my subsequent question, which would be, how do we get the city more involved in this land management process?
Sure. So if I had the magic, I would love to answer that question more. I think for the individuals that have been on the commission for a long time, I think that they could give a very detailed response on that. But as far as getting people involved, I think one of Olga's suggestions of putting this up on for the public to view, I think that's one way to do it, right? To let them know that we're active when we're there. I think there are so many different organizations in Escondido to getting the word out in that way. So I think involvement's important. I know we're all part of different organizations. Every time we attend them, to tell them that we have the meetings, come give your voice, come get involved. You live here, it's important. So I think it's definitely getting the word out, and yeah.
Okay. With that, Mike, do you have a question?
Yes, Ingrid, good seeing you.
Good to see you as well.
Hope you're doing well. So,
Thank you.
obviously, very, very knowledgeable in a lot of different areas, and as an active professional, I know your time is probably very precious. Do you foresee any problems, issues, concerns in regards to the meetings that are currently scheduled or set up? Second part of that is, if you've been able to view or participate in any of the meetings in the past, do you have recommendations of how they might be able to expand the scope of the particular meeting? Do you find them at all limiting in their content, or do you find that they are able to get the job done in a satisfactory, I guess a time within the time constraints that they currently have?
Okay. So first of all, I'm a managing partner of my law firm, and with that, there will be no time constraints. It's nice to be the boss. So, and a good leader, I would absolutely ensure that I attended all the meetings and did what was necessary. I think time management is important, and like everyone, we can always improve, but I think I'm pretty good at it. So as far as improvements, I think that, it's been really difficult with COVID-19. And when I was looking through the meeting agendas and different things like that, they've had to cancel a couple. Of course, this is not siloed for anybody. We're all currently living in this time period. So I think I'm a big fan of meeting regardless. I'm not sure specifically why the meetings were canceled, but I really am an advocate, if we have it scheduled, to try to continue to meet.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate that.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Olga?
Yes, Ingrid, thank you for applying and for interviewing today. You already answered my question, my standard question about would you support televising planning commission meetings? So I'm going to ask you something slightly different. One of the main tasks of being a planning commissioner is to interpret general plan, land use, zoning. So have you had a chance to review the city's general plan? Are you fairly familiar with the zoning map? Is that something is that subject matter comfortable for you? And I just want to know if you've looked at the general plan.
Absolutely. Well, I have looked at the general plan, and it absolutely is something that is, so this sounds nerdy, but I am jured property law. I love properties. I love zoning. I love rules and regulations. I guess I wouldn't be an attorney if I didn't. It would be a hard life if I was an attorney and I didn't enjoy those things. But I have reviewed it. I'm looking at it currently. I have a bunch of I have the bylaws open, because I write bylaws, as well as the entire general plan, and I was reviewing it specifically in our land use zoning policies. And to part of our responsibility on this commission is to provide advice to the city council and look at, of course, the rules and regulations, as well as what the ultimate goal of the city is.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Okay, and with that, Isabella, do you have any follow-up questions?
No follow-up question.
I do not either. And Mike, how about you?
No, just hope it goes well, Ingrid.
Thank you. Thank you so much to you all. Thank you for your time.
And Olga, any follow-ups? No?
No, I'm good. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thank you, Ingrid, for your volunteerism and applying. With that,
My pleasure. Thank you.
we'll move on to Kate, and I'll start the questioning, and I think you probably know what it is. If, in your option, oh, right, I keep forgetting the minute, sorry. Kate?
Sure, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to interview. My name is Kate Barbet. I've been in Escondido for just over 5 years now, and come from the Washington, D.C. area and years in federal government service, both starting out with the Peace Corps and then moving on to the Agency for International Development, and then on to the Department of Commerce, where I worked at NOAA for 15 years, and I was very much involved with helping coastal states do their planning and management for coastal regions, working with coastal state agencies, providing financial assistance, doing policy review, regulations oversight. It was actually partly a regulatory program, so we had to review their policies and provide feedback, et cetera. But essentially, it was really all about balance. It was about balance and smart growth along the coast, and working with both developers and communities to both increase their resilience to natural hazards, as well as look at economic growth opportunities. So we were really focused on trying to look at conservation of natural areas along with waterfront redevelopment opportunities to increase tourism, as well as think about historic use of waterfronts. So I've got a lot of planning and policy review along those lines, which I think would serve me well in this capacity. More recently, in my years here in Escondido, I spent 3 years at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography working to help stand up an Institute for Climate Change Impacts and Adaptation.
Kate, can you wrap it up? We're about at your 1 minute, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
With that, I'll start the questioning, and as I said, I think you know what it is. Process improvement, as you've observed the Planning Commission, if you were on it, what would you do to change it, and how would you engage the community more?
So I have attended multiple Planning Commission meetings, both because I'm interested, as well as I applied a couple of years ago under the Abed administration, and have observed some really good conversations, particularly with those who were attending to both defend or promote a particular project. I have a great deal of respect for the current commissioners and their process and how they have. There seem to be particularly thoughtful conversations and questioning of both project applicants, as well as a really good ear for listening to the public as well. So I commend them for that. I do believe that there's opportunities to enhance public participation. For example, I currently serve on one of the community advisory committees that was established by the city. And I don't know if there's opportunities there, but it strikes me that there might be ways to engage through those committees, because those committees represent people who are actively engaged in particular issue areas. And I've heard you say land use a couple times, Mayor. So I would think that there might be some opportunities there to engage through those individuals and their networks. I think each of those committees represent a suite of networks that could be really valuable, both for information sharing, for getting the word out, et cetera. So that's one angle. Obviously, I would definitely support the notion of televised commission meetings. I think that's an easy one. And then I would probably work with the communications staff of the city to do some brainstorming to try to figure out, what do they currently do? Are there ways to target particular professional groups or around particular issue areas that the commission might actually be addressing in the future? So those are just a few, and I could probably think of more if I had more time.
Thank you, Kate. With that, we'll move on with Mike.
Thank you, Kate. Really appreciate it. It was nice meeting you virtually, I think last week or the week before.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that meeting and the subsequent materials I received after that. You seem to have just a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I just love the way you articulate your position and help me in our previous meeting to understand those matters that you were discussing. From what you've witnessed with the way our current system works and the interactions that that you've witnessed that have transpired, anything that you would offer that would be something that you would like to see change as far as that communication? I know it's similar to questions that were asked before, but do you feel that when the public has a chance to speak, that they are given enough time to articulate a position? Do you feel that the members of the commission have enough time to properly articulate the positions that they are trying to represent?
I would say generally, certainly the applicants, I think, are given sufficient airtime to air their concerns or their project ideas. I don't think there's a question there. I sensed, and again, this is just as an observer, I did sense from time to time, or I have sensed that various commissioners might have benefited from the opportunity to have more conversation. And I don't know how that's possible, of course, due to the Browns Act, but I think that there must be ways, perhaps, to essentially get a little bit more education going across the commission on any given issue area that might facilitate that understanding. And I don't know, it's just an observation.
Okay.
But I think on the part of the applicants, I think they certainly have sufficient time. I would say that of course, there are those who may not be in disagreeing with potential issue or project, and I think they are given sufficient airtime, but I'm not sure about the deliberation of all of those issues.
Thank you very much.
Olga, please.
Thank you. Hello, Kate. How are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you for applying again. I remember that you were a really strong applicant when you took the opportunity to apply for this position in the past. So I'm glad to see you back and hope that you are successful this time. You already answered my question about televised planning commission meetings. I'm glad you would support that. I do believe that is one way to build engagement. I know you've read the general plan because we've talked about elements of the general plan and other opportunities. So my question to you is a little more refined. How would you communicate back to the council as a planning commissioner? And as I'm listening to responses, I'm thinking of, how I would answer the questions that the council is asking all of the applicants. And as a council member, I read the agendas and I read the minutes. And I would go to more meetings. If they were televised, I would watch them. I have been to a few. I'm not allowed to speak at them as a council member because it's quasi-judicial. So would you support, or can you think of a way that the Planning Commission could occasionally interact in a more personal way with the city council and to share dialogue or ideas? Because otherwise the only feedback that I get back from the Planning Commission is in the form of agendas and minutes. I find there to be a little disconnect sometimes. So how would you bridge that, or how would you suggest we bridge that challenge?
So I'm not really quite sure what all of the restrictions are. I'm not as familiar with those as I might be, but certainly when I first started observing the Planning Commission and the City Council both, I was curious about the connectivity there. In fact, that was one of my thoughts as I observed these various groups, and thinking to myself, well, given that there is a annual action planning process, there is a sort of behind, I would hope there would be some, I know the mayor has talked about a visioning process for 88. I don't know, it just strikes me that there might be an opportunity there for Planning Commission members to speak with the council in a forward-thinking planning, if that in fact is the role of the commission, in a planning kind of way to think through what the future might be in a collective fashion, which would present an opportunity both to strengthen those relationships and understanding of the two groups, as well as possibly the likelihood of focusing on very particular issue areas that are of interest to both groups. Like with respect to the downtown specific plan or whatever those issues might be.
Thank you. That's something we need to figure out. And I don't have a solution, but something should happen. So hopefully that's something you could work on too.
Sure. Yeah, no, actually, one of the things that I think I do bring to the table is process change, because I've overseen mergers of offices in the federal government and had a lot to do. In fact, one of my personal interests is personal and institutional change. I'm a change junkie, so I'm happy to look at those issues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Consuelo?
Thank you, Kate. So traditionally, what my observation has been with just planning commissions in general, having seen and attended planning commissions in other cities as well, prior to me joining the council, is a lot of times planning commissions tend to be made up of folks in the realtor, land use, development industry. What would you say is would be something that we need, since you talk about change, what are we missing on the Planning Commission? And then what strengths do you bring if you were to be appointed?
So first of all, diversity would be great. As someone, I think Stan mentioned, a group of older white men would be great to have some women, people of color, et cetera. That would be, from a diversity perspective, that's always of interest to me. I think what I bring to the table is perhaps a more experience at a national level, at a global level from my international work. I also bring a cultural background from years of training and work internationally in development. I think my planning and policy background speaks for itself with respect to program review and et cetera. And I think what I also bring is sort of a team player and process skills suite of skills to the table, which I think could be very valuable to the group. And I've spent a lot of time in strategic planning and would welcome the opportunity to help with that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Mike?
No further questions. Thank you very much.
Olga?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
And Consuelo?
No further questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Kate.
Okay.
We'll move on to Rick Paul. Rick, or Mike, would you mind starting the question, please? 1 minute intro.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to try to get one of you, I'm going to try to remember for one of you to do that 1 minute intro before this commission meeting ends.
It's okay, Mayor. We're all set. Thank you, everyone, for tonight. My 1 minute. So I came out here a little over 30 years ago from back east for a job in San Marcos and fell in love with old Escondido neighborhood and ended up moving to Escondido. And I've been there ever since. I'm still working in San Marcos, but I've lived in Escondido the whole 30 some odd years. And then in the early 90s, I was trying to give back to the community, and I ended up being appointed to the Planning Commission. Back then, they were 2-year terms, and I did 1 2-year term, and that was it. But I learned a lot about my community. I learned a lot about the things like the general plan, and I really had a great time with that experience. And so I've been looking to come back ever since. Unfortunately, the last administration wasn't interested in having me on the Planning Commission, but I still kept applying anyway. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm here again. And I'm prepared to answer the mayor's question. Mm-hmm. I do have a good idea, or I can share some insight from the way it was when I was on the Planning Commission in the 90s. A lot more things.
Rick,
a lot more.
Give us. You're at your 1 minute. Okay. So I'm going to allow Mike to ask his first question, and then you can get to mine in just a couple seconds here, a few minutes.
Okay.
Rick, I appreciate the work you've done in the past on the Planning Commission, the other things that you're active with in City of Escondido. We share some similar passions and areas of interest. things that you have thought of, should you have the opportunity this time around to be back on the Planning Commission, that you would like to see as far as the advancement, the beautification, and the activities that could be provided for the city of Escondido, things that you would like to be able to participate in on the commission?
Well, thanks, Mike, for that question. Yeah, you and I have interacted on a lot of projects together, and you know I'm a big fan of the outdoors, and that's another attraction I have with Escondido is we have a lot of open space and a lot of opportunities for outdoor activity, and so when we do general plan updates and things like that, we need to take that into consideration. That's become super valuable to the whole community. Not just you and I, right? When I first was involved with Daily Ranch, there were a lot of people in the community never heard of it and had never experienced it. And now to go up there on a Saturday and have the parking lot, overflowing is a credible change. And a lot of that's happened through the school programs too. We get the kids out there on field trips, and then they go home and tell their parents about it. And so. More and more, the open space and those activities have become more and more important to the community, and I personally love that, and I would do anything I can on the Planning Commission or in any other volunteer activity that to enhance that and to continue that, Michael. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
With that, we'll move on to Olga. Move on to Olga.
Thank you. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Hi, Olga. Great, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm remembering that you were one of my appointees to the general plan update process. Each council member of the day got 3, and you were one of my 3. So I know that you're very familiar with the general plan, Prop S, zoning. So I'm vouching for you. That's not a question. I just know you are. In terms of serving on the Planning Commission, my generic question is, would you support televising it to expand engagement with the public, or do you have another idea of how you might bring more community into the planning process, or at least a level of awareness about how it works?
Okay, so now you're going to steal the mayor's question.
That was my question first.
So yeah, televised meetings is great. I certainly love the city council meetings being televised and get to watch them from home. I love it. So I think the Planning Commission, sure, that'd be great. Because a lot of people won't go to the meeting because they think they'll be bored and it'll take a long time. But they might tune in if they're sitting at home and they have a few minutes. The previous administration wasn't interested in community input and hearing from the community. So a lot of minor decisions got removed from the Planning Commission and became administrative decisions. And I think if we start to lean back the other way, then that will naturally bring more people into the process. It would be much more open process. There's a committee now created, like a design review, mini design review committee that's just staff, and they review these minor appearance things, and they do it in a complete vacuum. Nobody has any insight into that at all, and they just spit out a decision later on, and there's no appeal process. Nobody even knows it's happening unless it's their particular project that's being reviewed by that group.
Thank you for that insight.
Okay, with that, Consuelo.
Hello, Rick. Thank you for your service to our city. My question would be similar to what I've asked other candidates. What is it that you think could be enhanced on the Planning Commission, and how would you be able to, what do you bring to the table, in other words?
So when I first joined that Planning Commission, I thought you were looking for engineering people and design people. But no, that's what the staff is for, and that's what the applicants are bringing. You want people that understand the community and are engaged in the community and can represent what they think the community wants. And so you should pick planning commissioners based on that, not based on are they an architect or a builder or something like that. In my personal opinion.
Thank you. And then the other part of my question was, what do you bring in that perspective?
Well, yeah, my community involvement, right? I mean, I'm not in the development business, but I am in the community building business. I love my community, and I want to see it thrive and be successful and make it a great place for people to want to work, live and play.
Thank you, Rick.
So Rick, you kind of answered my question, I think, about process improvement. But let me kind of rephrase it to see if you have anything else to add. In my mind, a planning commission should bring a recommendation to the council that has been vetted in some of the ways that you mentioned, where it's not only the staff has gone through the engineering and that sort of thing, but also the community was involved and engaged in the decision of whether or not we want that particular project in the community, and also how it looks, right? And how does it fit into the grand scheme of what we think Escondido should look like, and not have that done at a council meeting or have to be questioned. And so, with that as background, then give me some more thoughts on your process improvement and community engagement.
Okay, so I've seen some projects that they're like stealth projects, and nobody knows they're going on until they come to a planning commission meeting. But I've seen other projects where staff has had meetings with the public, and they have had notice meetings, and they're scheduled, and we get a lot of attendance by the populace. And it seems like that depends on either who the planner is, or maybe somebody at the city council is interested in a project, and they dictate to staff, hey, you guys should do this on this project. So maybe if you just had an across the board policy that all projects were treated the same way, then there would be more interfacing on all projects and not just some. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. Mike, do you have any further questions?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Olga, do you? No? I see you shaking your head. Okay, Consuelo?
No further questions. I appreciate your insight, Rick. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Rick, I have no further questions. And again, thank you for your volunteering and your insight as well. With that, we'll move on to Don Romo. Don, we're going to give you your 1 minute. See, I remember.
There you go. I've lived in Escondido for 50 years, so I thank you for this opportunity to, I see the shadow on my face of the sun there. I thank you for this opportunity to go ahead and reapply for the Planning Commission. I've been on the commission now for 6 years, and we've seen a lot of difference that's happened in Escondido. When I grew up here, it was a town that people wanted to come to. It was the leader of the community. It was really a great community, and Escondido is getting back to that community. We had a period of time back in the early 2000s where you just didn't see anything or have anything good happen in Escondido. I really want to see Escondido become a community where my kids want to live. They don't want to move away. They're going to have their kids here, and they're going to retire here. And we're going to have a life cycle community. And I think with the general plan and the way that things are going right now, as far as the perspective of staff and everybody engaged, we're moving in that direction. It's a matter of kind of us looking at it and saying, how's that going to enhance that to where this becomes a place everyone wants to live? And I'll give you one anecdotal story. Is
10 seconds.
About a year and a half ago, I was in La Jolla, and I heard two millennials talking about Escondido is an awesome place to live. And I thought, wow, we're making progress at this point now. So there you go.
All right, thank you. And Don, we're going to begin the questioning with Olga.
Hi, Don. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Great. I remember when you first applied and were selected. So thank you for your service, and thank you for all of the other community projects I've seen you be involved with. So as a longstanding member of the Planning Commission, would you support televising your meetings, broadcasting them? Obviously now we're doing it because of COVID, but I think it's a useful tool. Do you like that idea? Would you support it? And what other ideas do you have about bringing the community into understanding what the Planning Commission does and what our processes are?
Right. So I've had the benefit of listening to the question, so I'll kind of get a big answer on this thing. Yes, for television. I think that's a good idea. The challenge with television, though, it's almost after the fact. So if you want to have public participation, they're watching it, but they're not able to actually participate and give their input on in regards to it. It's really about getting the agendas out to specific groups early enough for them to become engaged within the process. And I know the city has specific groups that they can go ahead and email out those agendas to, and if there's an impact on them. What I've seen being on the commission is the people that are directly impacted or receive the mailers are the ones that are showing up because it's the direct impact. But a lot of times we're making decisions, for instance, downtown or for Palomar Heights or for the different projects around the community. And some folks have no idea that's happening because they've never received that public notification at all in regards to that. If you published them or something where people could get a better grasp of that, I think it would be very helpful so that you could get more people engaged. I know when the public comes out and they have strong opinions, sometimes we agree with them and sometimes we think there's a better way to go down the road with it. And we have made hard decisions that weren't popular, and other times it's like, no, we think staff needs to go back. And we do agree with how you feel about this and how it's going to impact your community or your neighborhood. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Consuelo, please.
Hello. So I see, Don, that you work also in the construction and development industry here locally. Have there been instances where you've had to recuse yourself from voting on projects? And if so, how many? One. Okay.
And specifically, I work on projects within the city and within Southern California on churches. And what I work specifically on is working in churches. And for Emmanuel Faith, I did have to recuse myself for that in regards to their CUP. But otherwise, no, there has not been a project as of yet.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll have another question, but I'll wait till the second round of questions.
Okay.
Okay. I think you know my question, Don. I hope you do. I'm always looking for thoughts on process improvement. You mentioned some of them in some of the other earlier questions. And so I'll try to rephrase it a little bit. Leave it open for your process improvement thoughts. But you also made a comment that made me think that obviously if something's being built in my neighborhood, then I'm going to be more concerned about it. But I kind of feel that maybe the downtown is everybody's neighborhood. There are certain parts of the city that everyone feels ownership of. And so would you agree with that? And do we not notify? I mean, if we do anything in the downtown, should the whole city be notified? Your thoughts?
I agree that the downtown, and there's other parts of the community that are impacted or impactful, or the entire community needs to be notified about it happening, so there's large developments that are going on, and I think the entire community needs to hear about it, and they need to have their inputs as well. I think what happens is sometimes folks don't want to have a lot of people hear about it because they don't want to have to deal with the crowds coming and listening to other people's concerns, and that's why we're there. We're there to hear and to make tough decisions when we have to, but to also consider how it's going to impact the community as a whole. When I spoke earlier about it being a community for the family to live forever, I want to hear about other families that are here and the challenges they're facing because this is going to be built, or why it's going to be an improvement to their community as well, or their neighborhood. So I think there's specific areas that we need to have that. And if there's a way to get that out to the entire city, then I'm not opposed to it. The more impact and the more people that are engaged within it and they understand why we're making the decisions we make, the easier it is for people to understand and to really feel like this is a place they want to stay because they understand why we're making those choices for them. And we are listening to what they have to say as well. There's nothing worse than sitting someplace and feeling like somebody hasn't heard the question you asked at all, or the comments you've made. And so our goal is to, or my goal at least, is to really understand and hear what people are saying and being able to react to that as well in a way that's going to enhance the community as a whole, not just one segment of the population.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Don. Appreciate it. You may have inadvertently answered my question in your comments just now. I was going to ask if you've experienced any particular areas of frustration while serving on the Planning Commission, and if so, have you been able to persuade your colleagues to modify or change things so those frustrations are either eliminated or significantly reduced?
For me, it really is it's being able to communicate with my fellow commissioners and expressing to them why I think this is a good idea or a bad idea, and being able to have a really thoughtful dialogue with them and taking the time to actually listen to what they're saying and then really listen and not just be set on, I've decided before I show up at the meeting. This is my decision, this is where I'm at. It's really about getting that input with it. And then when some things we may not agree with and oppose it or not approve it, and then it goes to the city council and it's approved. The city council has the entire rights to do that, but sometimes, it's kind of like, I spent all this time, I wish I could have communicated with you to share with you why. And Olga said, even now, well, I see the minutes, and sometimes you read through the minutes, and it's not the entire conversation, it's just the highlights of it. And so how you can record that so the city council then could actually go back and watch that may be incredibly helpful if it's televised for you that way, so that you do see that clear communication of what really happened in the dialogue, not just the minutes or the agenda item of how it occurred in that process. So I think that would be helpful.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Great response.
Thank you.
Olga, do you have any follow-up?
I want to follow up on your question, Mayor. It was a great question because I think what you're getting at is the root of the noticing requirement. The law is 500 feet from the project property line. And many times, even from Planning Commission to Council, we've had people that show up and feel like we haven't told them what we're up to, and they feel like we're being tricky. And it's really that we're meeting the bare minimum that the law requires, which is notifying property owners within 500 feet of a project space. So I like the mayor's comment that the downtown is sort of everybody's neighborhood, but it does bring me to my question the long way around. Sorry, Don. Would you support, with the Planning Commission and the council and staff, would you support reviewing or noticing requirements to go above and beyond the legal minimum required to something that is more appropriately engaging and forthright with our residents? Is that something that you would want to take up as a planning commissioner and contribute to that conversation?
Yes, and I will tell you, in other communities in Southern California, those distances are nobody has the exact same distance. So for instance, some cities are at 1,000 feet, which is about a quarter mile. And when you start taking that radius, that's a pretty good swath of people, and with their social networks and everything else, they'll begin to get that out. And you can make it even further, but the downtown specific plan or something like that, where you're working with that, that's up to make a decision of how you're going to get that accomplished and get it out to the general public or the general population. So
that sounds like a partnership opportunity, because I've argued it many times and failed. So I think I just need a broader network of colleagues at different levels of service in our city to really make it clear that that is a value that we want to pursue. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Escondido, I think you had a follow-up.
I do, thank you. So Dawn, I really resonated with what you said about millennials in our city. I am not a millennial, but very close in age range to millennials. And one thing that is important to me is that the people who grew up in our city that they want to come back after they go to college, and that they see themselves staying in the city that they grew up in. So that very much resonates with me, and I'm always happy when I do see them come back. So given the current makeup of the Planning Commission, and since you are an incumbent, what would you say is missing from the current makeup of the Planning Commission that would improve the commission?
Oh boy, I heard you ask Commissioner Span that question, and there's a lot of really good applicants. And whether I'm successful at being reappointed to the Planning Commission or not, there's a lot of great applicants, and I think with the makeup of the people applying now, it'll be filled. And I think you'll have that going on. I think what happened in the past is it was focused on how do I get things accomplished very quickly, and how do I get things through the city, and it was always how do we get to yes, and that was kind of the mantra. And so you have that, and that's important because developers want to come to Escondido and they want to be able to get things done and they want to be successful with it. When you look at millennials and you get engaged with millennials, and why I think a lot of them don't come back is there's no place for them to live. There's not affordable places for them to live, and affordable does not mean that it has to be super low income or anything. It just has to be affordable for millennial folks to live, to get married, come here, live, grow a little, have children, move to a new spot, and move through that whole process. And that's what I think is important, is that you have people that have that understanding and want to really look at ways to get a broad spectrum of folks really paying attention to it. But everybody that I've heard so far, I mean, they're awesome. What can I say? You'll get it covered, Consuelo. You just will. So.
Thank you for your openness, and I agree. We do have an excellent list of candidates this time around. Thank you.
Yeah.
Don, I don't have a follow-up question, and I think Mike, do you?
I do not.
Okay, Don, again, thank you for all your service to the city, and again for volunteering one more time. With that, we'll move on to Dow. Did I pronounce that correctly? I hope.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, the pronounce of my name is Yao, pronounced like a Y, so it is Yao Dawn. I know it is a little bit deceiving with the two D's, but I apologize.
Okay, Yao.
Thank you.
With that, we'll begin with your 1 minute.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm sitting among the most distinguished panels of people that I most respect, so thank you so much for the opportunity. Just a little bit of background, we moved to Escondido in 1987. That was almost 33 years ago. And the reason why we moved to Escondido is we found that Escondido is such a beautiful place, very seclusive place to live, with a good place for family, good school district. I raised two wonderful boys, graduated from San Pascual High. And this year, my youngest graduated from San Pascual High 2020. Unfortunately, he couldn't walk for graduation, but we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to be living in Escondido, and we're loving it. I'm passionate about Escondido. I'm passionate about the people in Escondido.
10 seconds, 10 seconds.
I'm sorry.
You have about 10 seconds and then your minute is over.
And I'm hope that I could bring my experience to be a part of the planning group for the city of Escondido. Thank you.
Thank you. And Consuelo, would you begin our question, please?
Sure. Hello, Yao. So I noticed that you have shown interest in two commissions, the Planning Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission. Do you have a preference as a first choice for one of the commissions?
I would love to be on the Planning Commission is because of my background as project management for construction. I did, in the 8 years when I was working for Mountain Health Community Clinics, which is, we have one clinic here in Escondido. I was the main executive director for that, for community clinic. Plus, I managed the whole construction project in Campo. We built 24,000 square feet in Campo. I was spearheaded that whole project, conducted the environmental assessment, making sure that we review plan, working with the city of San Diego, of anything that we require permit for grading, anything that we do for that construction, and that was completed back in 2017. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that during the construction, we had included the Mountain Empire communities just to make sure that they are participating in our planning process. I also a member of Diane Jacob planning committee back in 2015 when the county was talking about conveying land to the Mountain Empire area, which they did back in 2018 or 2019. That all that land was conveyed to Mountain Health, plus some of the nonprofit organizations. So I'm passionate about participating in the planning for the city of Escondido, based on my background.
Thank you so much, Yao.
Thank you.
Yao, as you know, my question deals with process improvement. I'm always looking for ideas and ways that the Planning Commission can improve itself, be more comprehensive, as we talked a little bit about tonight, and also help have the city take more ownership in the direction, and by that I mean more involvement from the city as to where we're going to go. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we might do the process.
One of the things that I've learned from the Mount Empire Campo Medical Clinic construction was that without involve the community at large into your project and share the information thoroughly and be very transparent with your information, we involve all groups from nonprofit to profit to community service to the senior program to the library. We invite them to the meeting, and the way to invite the communities is that you need to reach out to them, remind them what your goal and objective, and providing them with the objective, providing them with the agenda so they know what to expect when they participate in your meeting. But most important thing is that transparency is very important. So any of the meeting that we conducted, we would have material we send out to the community members. We also share with the city council, just so that everybody will be on the same page and have the same information versus not sharing it. That is something that I have learned in the past, that sharing information is very important to be successful in everything that we do.
Okay, thank you. With that, on to Mike.
Yes, thank you very much for being here, Yao. And I know this is probably not a real fair question. I'm not sure how much you've been able to observe with our Escondido Planning Commission over the years, but you've obviously had experience before other groups. Things that you have seen that you would like to bring to the Escondido Planning Commission, ideas, thoughts, anything that comes to mind that you think would be of benefit to the city as a whole and the Planning Commission in particular?
I truly believe that in any group or any planning group, we need to have diversity, number one. The number two is also we need to have a goal and objective. And that goal and objective would have to benefit the community at large. For example, if the city of Escondido have any planning, land use or anything, number one, we have to look at what would that benefit the community, the population that living in Escondido, and also how would the planning would impact the environment that we live in, because the environment health is very important.
Okay, thank you. I can't see if my mic's on or not, but thank you very much.
We have you loud and clear, Mike. Thank you.
There it is. Now I see it. Okay.
Okay, and with that, Olga.
Thank you. Hello, Yao, how are you?
I'm great, Olga. How are you?
Good, it's nice to meet you. I was very impressed with your application as well. I wanted to ask you the same question I've asked everybody else. Would you support having televised planning commission meetings to be able to reach a broader audience with the work that you do as a commissioner? And then one additional question, can you tell me what other languages you speak? Because I'd like to know.
I speak Vietnamese, read, write Vietnamese very well. I do speak a little bit of French and a tiny bit of Chinese.
That's wonderful. Because that's something we haven't traditionally had, represented within our structures. So in terms of televising planning commission meetings, would you feel comfortable supporting that idea, making sure it happens, and using that as a tool to promote the work of a planning commission within our community?
I'm very supportive of the Zoom meeting and the televised meeting for a couple reasons. For what I have learned from the meeting that we had in the Mountain Empire, the majority of the citizens were unable to attend the meeting in person, even though they wanted to, for various reasons. It could be childcare issue, it could be employment, it could be transportation. So we opened for conference call, and we get more participation from conference call. And we were hoping to have televised meeting like this, what we have right now in the backcountry, but we weren't able to. But now, if we have that in place for any meeting, I believe that we could, increase the participation rate very, very well.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
And finally, Isabella.
Yes. So for my second round of questions, I'm happy to learn that you do speak multiple languages, and particularly Vietnamese. We have a growing Vietnamese population in our city, and I know in my district, I have residents who are Vietnamese and speak Vietnamese. So how would you use your skill set and to engage our broader community? What are some of your ideas for getting our broader community more engaged that maybe haven't historically been engaged with the planning commission if you were appointed?
I'm sorry, there's I can't hear the question. There's some disconnection with the sound.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm happy to learn that you speak Vietnamese because we do have a growing Vietnamese community in our city, and I know it just from personal experience in my district, I have numerous Vietnamese residents in District 1. How would you use your skill set, and how would you outreach to the broader community to ensure that we're reaching more of our residents in the Planning Commission? What are some of your ideas for that?
Just so background of the Vietnamese population, they're very shy. They are very introvert, which means they really don't want to reach out to anyone. Knowing that we have to make an opportunity to come out there and communicate with the Vietnamese people. We can always go to the churches because they participate greatly in the church program. We can go to their businesses because I know that we have the Asian community grown their business in Escondido over the years tremendously. We have a huge amount of population living in the mobile home here in Escondido. So we can do face-to-face meeting, or I would personally go to their house, feel comfortable and meet with them if the social distancing is lifted. But those are the ideas, and we can also do pamphlets and sending out in their own language so they understand what's going on in Escondido. Because I know that they're very, very much wanted to understand Escondido and wanted to understand what's going on in Escondido, because I know that the population view Escondido is part of their second home.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, I agree that there is definitely more Vietnamese businesses and our Asian community is growing. So I appreciate your insight and that you're culturally connected to this community and have some ideas for if you're appointed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yao, I have no further questions. Mike?
I do not, but thank you again very much for your time and the way you articulated things so beautifully.
Thank you.
Olga?
No, I just wanted to again compliment you on your qualifications and how detailed you are in your responses. It shows that you know what you're talking about. So thank you. I'm very impressed.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Yao, for volunteering and your contributions to our community. With that, we'll go to our last applicant, and that's Barry. Barry, can you hear me okay? I can't see you on the screen.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I have you loud and clear. With that, then, Barry, I'll let you begin with your 1-minute intro.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to each of you for being here and for this opportunity. I'm grateful for, I'm grateful for the individuals, professionals we have that serve our city in each one of you. I appreciate the diversity of the group that we have that I'm addressing, and it mimics what I think represents our city and kind of my perspective as well. I come from a diverse background in terms of my family heritage. I grew up in North County, enjoyed high school and everything in the North County, San Diego area. I then lived some time out of the country in Latin America and began my schooling when I returned at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in architecture and engineering. Graduated from there, wonderful school with a degree in architectural engineering, and then moved to Los Angeles for a short time, missing San Diego. But I lived in Los Angeles where I served on a homeowners board, learned a lot there.
And Barry, 10 seconds, please.
Pardon me?
10 seconds, please.
Okay. So I've been in the city now for 14 years as a resident, a homeowner, a parent, a business owner, and very much enjoy the community that we have and want to give of myself to try to benefit the city in some way.
All right, thank you. I'll start the questioning. And Barry, I think you should know my question. As you look at the Planning Commission, I would like to hear your thoughts on how we can do process improvement and more engagement with the city. And by engagement, not just feedback, but also to create a sense of taking ownership of what our future will look like.
I appreciate the question. As I think of the engagement, I put myself in those shoes of trying to understand that question. I think, well, as a homeowner, as a busy person, as a resident, as a father, how easy is it for me to engage and participate with the city? I've tried to do that, serving on the several boards and commissions that I'm currently on with the city, but I find it's pretty difficult to stay fully engaged. So my thought is, while I agree with the idea of allowing the public to have the information that's relevant to their participation, I think we can serve better, especially in this millennial era where we have folks that are maybe a little, if we could characterize it as lazier in terms of participation and information. We almost have to do a marketing job to reach out and publicize to them. I think when people do receive better information of what's going on, I think it's far easier for them to get animated and engaged and want to participate. So I think more than just putting information out there, I think we have to do a little bit further efforts to try to get positive engagement, because I believe if we simply put information out there, we're going to get the low-hanging fruit in terms of those that reach out to the community. But that's going to be a select group, and what we really benefit from is a diversity in group where we get everybody, not just a few people. Hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. With that, we'll move on to Mike.
Okay, a bit of a loaded question, but I thought a question that I'm going to steal one of Consuelo's questions. Guys, I think probably we should have been asking this to everyone in the interview process today. Do you have any secondary language skills? You had mentioned living in out of the country and your ethnic background. What are your language skills?
Well, my mother was born and raised in Mexico, so I grew up as a young child with her not speaking English and learning English. So I had the advantage, I suppose, of learning Spanish growing up, and then furthering that in my studies and efforts so that I became fairly fluent, am fairly fluent in Spanish speaking, which has been a real benefit to me professionally and in many ways, and especially in a city like Escondido, where that's kind of a big part of us here.
Okay, thank you. I'll have a follow-up question afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Olga, please.
Le voy a preguntar en español, señor Berry.
Bien.
No, I'm just teasing. Same question I've asked. Would you support televised planning commission meetings as a method of expanding the general knowledge of how planning commissioners and your work impacts the city? And, if you have a better idea, I'd like to hear that as well.
Thank you. Yes, I absolutely support it. I think having access to that information and not limited to those that can actually get in a car, drive over, and be in that meeting is a really good idea. I think we can further that good idea, like I said, in reaching out. I'm not exactly sure how, in terms of information that's relevant that would be contained in that meeting. I think we can get that information out, not just in a meeting, but maybe precede the meeting with that kind of information. If people can understand the kind of topics and concerns and issues that are going to be addressed in those meetings ahead of time, it gives them an opportunity to maybe decide, hey, I do want to head down to that meeting. I don't just want to watch it. I actually want to participate in it. So I think if we're able to take topics or relevant subject matter that's going to be presented in those meetings and somehow communicate that in the channels that are really going to reach a wide diversity of folks, I think we stand the better chance of that participation. But I think that, like I said, is in addition to the televising. I think the televising is a great idea.
Thank you, Barry.
You bet.
Consuelo?
Thanks, Barry. So as far as the current makeup of the Planning Commission, what would you say is missing from the current commission as far as maybe perspective? And then how are you able to fill that gap, if you see any gaps at all?
Sure. In fairness to them, I don't know that I would disparage any of their efforts or the progress. I think good things have been done in terms of what we might be able to build on from what's there. I think certainly, as I look over the history, the record history of what's been approved by the Planning Commission, most of what I see is almost entirely staff recommendations are upheld. So it's almost like if you show up and you vote, you can almost predict what's going to happen. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a fair assessment. That's just what the record shows. What I think I could bring, and I think is important for the Planning Commission, is to have not just a diversity of individual types of people, but I think the individuals that serve on the board should bring their own diversity to the board. And what I mean by that is an individual that serves on the board doesn't have to be of one group or of another, but they can be of many backgrounds within themselves. And that's something that I like to consider that I bring, is the fact that, being a father, being someone that represents maybe minority groups as well, being an engineer, a professional engineer by profession, being someone that was a business owner previously in the city, being someone that has built a house, that has gone through the process of trying to actually get a project completed. Somebody that has a background like I do in a lot of different areas, I think makes a diverse individual that represents, that commission seat.
Thank you for your thorough response.
Yeah.
Barry, I don't have any follow-ups. Mike?
Actually, I thought I did, but in his answering Consuelo's question, that took care of my question as well. Again, thorough response and really appreciate that perspective and insight. Thank you.
Olga, any follow-ups?
Just one. In your application, Barry, you list your community involvement as 3 of our advisory groups already. The economic development, homeless and housing, and climate and environment. I presume you're going to remain active in those. Is your planning commission involvement going to be instead of or in addition to this community involvement?
Well, that's a great question. In terms of, I've not only those 3, but the Building Advisory and Appeals Board, I don't know. Number one, I guess there's 2 questions there. One is the appropriateness of maintaining all of those positions, and the other is the practicality time-wise of doing so. I know the Planning Commission is a pretty significant dedication and commitment of time. It may preclude the ability to participate in 4 other areas on the city as well. So it's a great question. I don't know that I have an answer. I'm not sure that the other part of that question, I guess, is the fact that with the COVID issue, it's been a little bit stifling in terms of how we've been able to operate under those advisory groups. So in terms of that time commitment, which is probably the biggest issue, if it's possible, I do like to participate in all things. I don't know that participating in those advisory positions is a conflict potentially with serving on the Planning Commission. It may be. I'm not aware.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Diaz, this is Zach Beck. I just wanted to let you know serving on the Citizens Advisory Committee is not in conflict with serving on a standard board or commission, just to let you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Barry. Consuelo's just signaled that she does not have any follow-up questions. Well, that concludes our applicants. The council will make a decision on the 24th. I just want to I often say that Escondido is filled with a bunch of unsung heroes, and you guys are all now on my list for your volunteerism and trying to make the city better. With that...
Mayor, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
We had an applicant that didn't log in. Are we to exclude her from consideration in our recommendation to you?
Councilmember Diaz, I can speak to that. So all of the candidates have been contacted and informed of the interview process multiple times. Obviously, there was a lot of flexibility due to the change of schedule from last week, but that candidate, Rebel Bolton, has not contacted us indicating whether or not she's withdrawn. So technically, her application still is on file, and you could recommend her, but it appears as though she's not going to be able to attend the meeting today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. With that, we're going to take a 2-minute break and allow the applicants to log off, and we have some other applicants to log on for the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Carol, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Marian, do you want to test your sound?
I think I'm good.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I have no idea.
Mayor, it looks like everyone's logged in, so you're ready to proceed.
Okay, I'm just going to give the council members a chance to see their faces. If I could. Right, let's see, hold it, mic, so. We'll start in just a second. I'm just waiting for Consuelo and Mike to come back. No, I understand Vietnamese has like 8 tones. Tones? It's like Chinese has 4 tones. Like Mandarin has like ma, ma, ma. And that means 4 different, that's the same sound. Well, I mean, you know, it means 4 different things.
Yeah, my wife speaks fluent Mandarin. It's so difficult to discern.
Yeah, is she Chinese?
No, she's an American, but her family, she lived in China for about 7 years, so they're family missionaries. That's really cool.
Yeah.
What a great skill. Yeah. It's such a hard language.
It's brutal when I used to travel or to get you have translators, and these translators now, those are very difficult. There's just no connection between them translating and translation back to you. Because if they're not the right dialects.
Yeah.
I have a good story for your wife. My wife is from China.
Oh, no, wait, what part?
Northeast.
Okay.
Yeah, she is, there's a tongue twister in Chinese called 4, it would be 4, 14, 40, 44. Okay? I'll tell you after. But it's, you should hear my wife say it and then hear how you're really supposed to say it. All right, I see that we've got the council members back, and we also have our applicants. First of all, welcome. What we're going to do is essentially go one at a time through the council asking questions. Maybe there might be a short follow-up question, and then finally we'll go through for a second round. But as we start this out, we're going to start out with a 1-minute intro. And I'll give it a little 10-second whisper when you're close to that 1 minute, and to kind of introduce yourself to the council members. And for the council members, we've just been notified that Yao has decided to withdraw her application from the Historic Preservation Commission and just put it in for the Planning Commission. Okay, with that, let's begin with you, Marian. And give us your 1-minute introduction, please. I think you're still muted, Marian. Can you check?
Can you hear me now?
I've got you loud and clear. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm so pleased to be here. My name is Marian Hanlon. I'm a longtime resident of Escondido. My family came here back in the 70s. I'm a longtime realtor. I own property in the old Escondido Historic District. And I'm an incumbent, so I've been here before. My basic goal is to keep the beauty and preserve the value that we have in this community and really to just highlight all of the good things that we have here. I do know that it's a fine line to walk between not only preserving every piece that's historically significant, and also I think it's important that we need to look at the future as well. So with those, to walk that fine line to preserve and protect, as well as to make it so that we can move into the future, I think it's very important for our community. And I think that's basically pretty much all that I have to say. And I hope that you will consider me again for my position.
Okay, thank you. And we'll begin the questioning with Mike.
Okay, this is going to be a tough one. I think we have, 3 applicants for 3 seats? Is that correct, Zach?
That is correct as of now, correct.
Okay, so Marian, why should we pick you number 1 and not number 3 of the 3 seats that are, I was being facetious, sorry. But so give me a little bit of perspective as to what it is that you enjoy about being on this commission, anything in particular, and secondly, if there are areas that are of concern to you that you think need to be addressed in more detail or in more depth.
I think preserving our history is something that I particularly appreciate. In order to move forward clearly, you need to know where you've come from. And I think Escondido is doing a pretty good job of that. And that's something that particularly, certainly interests me very much. As far as what areas do I feel that are lacking, I can give you a good example right here, right now. It took me 3 weeks to get through to the city to get a certificate of appropriateness. And Paul Bingham finally helped me, but my calls went unanswered.
Thank you very much. That's obviously helpful. Appreciate that.
Hey, Olga?
Yes, thank you. There is increasing interest in redeveloping the downtown area. There have been projects proposed in our city that may impact negatively the goals of the Historic Preservation Commission. Yeah. And so my question is, how do you see the Historic Preservation Commission providing input in a way that is timely, so that the dialogue takes place before projects are approved or set to be approved by the city council? I feel just in the last year there's been some disconnect. So how do you envision, as a member of this Historic Preservation Commission, getting a say or getting a chance to review or provide input, not only as the project is being packaged for consideration by the council, but also directly to the city council? Like, is that question clear? Or?
I think so. Let me see, and then maybe you can use a follow-up question. I think the thing that I found is that we're just in the loop a little bit too late. It would be much more helpful if we could get in and help out earlier. I think that's pretty much the key to be helpful in this. We just, sometimes these meetings come, and those proposals come to us when it's the week before it goes to you. So I believe earlier would be better.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
Consuelo?
Thank you, Marian. Hi. So I'm not as familiar with the Historic Preservation Commission, but what would you say, one of the observations that I've had about this commission is that we didn't get a lot of applicants. And for me, what is very important is, community engagement, and that we have commissions that are, helpful to the city, and that the people who participate in our commissions feel that they're spending their time in a good way and a productive way that is helping our community. What would you say are some, I hear that you've mentioned some of the challenges. What are some of the maybe perspectives that are missing from the Historic Preservation Commission, and how do you propose addressing some of the challenges as an incumbent moving forward if you were to be reappointed?
I'm not so sure I understand your question quite. Could you rephrase that for me, please?
So it's kind of a two-part question. The first one is what perspectives do you think are missing on your commission? Since it's mostly incumbents that are running again, and then for reappointment, and then you've mentioned some challenges. As a commissioner, if you were to be reappointed, how would you address those challenges? How would you be part of the solution?
Okay, as far as the incumbents that are applying for the new job, you have Carol Ray. She's an excellent resource. I think from the Historic Preservation Commission, you couldn't ask for anyone who's been and proven long-term and engaged in the community for years, and who's very knowledgeable. Also, we have a great resources in the Pioneer Room, the History Center at Grape Day Park, and those offer, complete research possibilities and perspectives widely for the historic community. As far as working together with challenges as an incumbent, I think teamwork together with the city more closely would be probably your most significant resource there. The closer we work together as a team, the better off and the more concise and the quickly and more smoothly things will move.
Thank you.
My question, since we actually have three incumbents, is this will be for all of you. And that is, what do you consider the commission's failure or shortcoming, and what would you do in your next term to remedy or correct that failure or shortcoming? Marian, we'll start with you.
I think the biggest shortcoming for me is that sometimes I didn't get enough time to research a project completely. I think I'm so pleased to be a part of it, and I am learning, as I'm sure everybody is, and it's just good to be here. As far as failures, I don't see any. I don't see any.
Okay. Thank you. Second, Mike, do you have any follow-up questions?
No, sir, I do not.
Olga? Consuelo?
No.
And I do not either. Thank you, Marian. With that, we'll move on to Carol Ray, and we'll begin with Olga. Oh, 1 minute. There, I forgot again. 1 minute.
Okay, do you want me to start with my
1 minute introduction, right? You weren't here for the Planning Commission, Carol. I failed more than I succeeded in reminding you to give the 1 minute.
Hey, we're all facing challenges here. So I have the sun shifting through this room today, so I hope that's not a problem. I believe all of you know me pretty well. And I think that you know that I have a passion for historic preservation. I've been at it with the Historic Preservation Commission and the Design Review Board as the expert in historic preservation for 10 years now. As soon as I left employment with the city, I was right there wanting to be a part of a commission, and especially this one. I just feel I have the experience, knowledge, and ability to be helpful to this commission. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, we'll begin our questioning with Olga.
Hi, Carol. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. I'm happy to see you reapplying for this function. I'll ask you the same question I asked Marian, but I also have an additional one for you. So my question to Marian, if I phrased it correctly, was, how do you feel like you can interject a historic preservation perspective in a timely way? Because as you know, I often get an email from you like the week of an agenda item that is of importance. And so I feel like something is out of sync. So do you have an idea about that? And then I'll save my follow-up question for the lightning round.
Okay. Yeah, a lot goes on with the city. I feel a little disconnect because we are tasked by the city municipal code with preserving the history here of buildings and sites, areas, and we need to be consulted. We've got some marvelous experts in the field. I'm not the only one on this commission, and yet the only opportunities we really have to weigh in are every 2 weeks. My dog, it's time for her to walk, so I'm trying to keep her quiet. But I'm sorry, every 2 months when we meet, we are given us a specific agenda of topics we can address, and just all too often there are things going on in the city that where we are not being included for public input.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Consuelo?
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
So this theme of a disconnect is coming up quite a bit with, and so I want to know if you have any suggestions for how to move forward, where some of these disconnects can be remedied. For example, maybe meeting every month instead of every other month. And what are some of the things that you would initiate if you were reappointed as an incumbent to get the ball rolling and make sure that these disconnects do not continue to happen?
Well, I think if you were to ask all of us if we would be willing to meet monthly or even more than that, we would be more than glad to do that. I think we all have a passion for historic preservation. I think part of the problem too is our hands are sort of tied. Especially so much is going on in the downtown area. The downtown area has one of the most concentrated collection of historic buildings in town. And yet because it's not a historic district, we're told by staff that we can't necessarily say anything about a project. And yet municipal code says we're responsible for historic areas. And I think that is part of it. So when we see changes and projects for the downtown where we are not officially asked for our input for a vote, we just feel neglected. We're out of the loop. We don't want to hold up progress, but there are often some simple things that could be done to compromise because we have this unique downtown with that everybody loves.
Thank you.
Hey, Carol, my question is the same.
Oops, sorry.
If you
Go ahead.
failure or shortcoming, what do you think is the commission's greatest failure or shortcoming, and in your next term, what would you do to correct it?
Well, we're already working on something. There is a committee that I'm involved with that is looking at the downtown specific plan and how we can be more involved earlier on in projects in the downtown. And so we're working through that and hope to have a presentation for the council within a couple of months. The COVID set us back a little bit because we haven't been able to meet. So we're definitely working toward that. Possibly one of our issues is that we're not doing a good enough job educating the community. When things come up, things like the Aspire apartment building downtown, too many people. Do I need to stop?
Oh. You're fine.
Oh, okay. Too many people didn't know about it or were upset at what was happening to their historic downtown. And so there's a lot of disinterest in historic preservation until we can get the word out and people say, oh, wait, no, you can't do that. So I think we need to do a better job educating and involving the public. And I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but we can discuss it as a commission and take up that important job.
Thank you. With that, I'll go back to Mike. Do you have any follow-up questions?
I don't remember if I asked Carol a question or not.
Not
So
yet.
it doesn't
No, you
matter.
did. I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter. So Carol, so you've been doing this a long time, and I know you have a lot of passion for all aspects of this particular commission. Something that you've wanted to see done for years, but just have never been able to quite get it taken care of. Your like your number one pet project that you'd love to see happen for the historical area.
Well, as I think first to address what needs to happen with the commission, and I think it needs to be, this project we're working on now. Plus, we need to update the guidelines and maybe even provide more training for staff. They're issuing certificate of appropriateness certificates, and the expertise is in the commission. And the staff is fairly well educated about what's historically appropriate, but there have been a couple of little slip-ups and things were approved that shouldn't have been. And so I think by updating the guidelines for owners of historic homes and making sure that staff is updated, or if some of the responsibility for approving certificates of appropriateness could move to the Historic Preservation Commission, that would be terrific. I think that, I'm not sure that's what you were asking, but those are my concerns and interests.
Sorry, there was a lot of subjectivity in that question. That was your response. So thank you for sharing those thoughts and insights.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Olga, the lightning round.
That's the lightning round. So I waited. So Carol, one of the things that's come up in the last few years in council meetings is that as Mills Act applications come before us and we suddenly pay attention to what criteria need to be met in order to designate a home as historic, we realize that a large part of our city is housing stock in our city is approaching the age where it might qualify to be historic. And so an area that I would love to see more engagement from the Historic Preservation Commission is in putting together some guidelines for us as a council to explore in terms of what new old parts of our city may be considered historic. Do you have any thoughts around that? I know we've made eye contact on certain properties that maybe didn't meet the stereotype look of a historic home, but met the technical qualifications. And I want to make sure that the city crafts appropriate policy, and I think it should come from your group.
Okay, there are already very specific guidelines. If you look at the planning department website about how a home can qualify, first for the local register, and the 50 years is the marker. So anything 50 years old and older, which includes quite an amazing stock of mid-century homes, would qualify. We have specific criteria that a home must meet. And by the time it reaches the Historic Preservation Commission, and we do weigh in on those, both the local register and the Mills Act, then if we recommend that it should be, a property should be on the Mills Act, odds are pretty darn good that it qualifies, and it would be a good one. I would say that Council Member Martinez's area has a considerable neighborhood there, the Flower Streets, with some amazing mid-century homes, and many of those could qualify for the Mills Act, which would be a huge benefit for her constituents if some of those would come through. So, there are actually books in the planning department of surveys that show historic properties. We haven't updated those, and that should be another project of the HPC.
I just know, and Councilmember Roscoe will say this often, the Flower Streets are all historic, but there doesn't seem to be clear acknowledgement or direction or even a process for what happens just because they qualify. So I would like to see some more development around either information to the community or how that would funnel through the Preservation Commission. It just seems like an area that may enhance engagement around historic preservation if we could reach out. So anyway, thank you. I know I have more questions for you, but I'll just email you later.
Oh, okay, anytime.
Okay, Consuelo?
No further questions.
All right, and I have none. And Mike, any?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Olga, good? Everybody? All right. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to Cal Breckenfield, and Consuelo. Can you start the question, please?
Mayor, this is Director of Information Systems, Rob. Those are the only two candidates we have online.
Okay. Then we'll do the same as we did for Rebel. Let's look into that and see what the story is to see if they're still interested. With that, Carol and Marian, thank you both very much. We very much appreciate your support and willingness to continue your support and volunteerism to make Escondido and its community a better place. With that, we'll move on to the Public Arts Commission. In about 2 minutes, we'll just take a quick break. And Marian and Carol, before you leave, we will make the final decision on the 24th at that meeting. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So anyway, you know the number 4 in Chinese? Sid. What's 10? Sure. It also kind of means yes. Yeah. Sure is pronounced like sure. So the 4 is Sid, and 14 is Sid, sure, Sid. 10-4. Okay. Right? And then 40 is 410. So it's Sid, sure, right? Sid. And then Sid, sure. And then 44 would be Sid, sure, Sid. Okay? So it's hard for a Chinese.
Hello, Amanda. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but my wife is from the Northeast.
I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes,
Okay, perfect. I can hear you good. They'll start momentarily.
I just can't imagine because Vogel said to me in English, he just says, I just do not, for example, we were talking about Tara and Dara. You could not hear the difference. I mean, it's like a Spanish person can't distinguishes you when your brain hardens. So she'll say stuff in Chinese, especially with my daughter. Yeah. And I'm like, that sounds like fucking Sam. What he's talking about, you know? And my daughter was on that day that I sang for her. Yeah. So your daughter speaks, she's fluent? No, she's learning, and she's getting better. But she goes to Chinese school once a week, and her mother's doing it. But she was slow to talk, and so my wife panics and stops speaking Chinese to her, and then starts just English. But she still has the pronunciations and all that stuff. So she's coming along, and she can read and write, and yeah, and she's learning all that.
That is a great thing to have as part of your just overall education, not just building the house.
Well, it's
Any plan, has your daughter been to China?
well, my daughter, when she was very young, went to China, and I think they're planning, they were going to go this summer, but I kind of,
never mind.
But she went, I think they're going to try to go next summer, because my wife still has a sister over there.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid.
Yeah, you're right.
I went and meet them there for like a week if you want to go see like the Great Wall, go do tours and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you think I'm just going over there for
Sit around the house.
sit around the house where they tell funny stories about being
Oh,
a kid
yeah.
in Chinese.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
That's
Yeah. All right. Do we have Amanda? That was one.
and Terry.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Mike and Olga, when you're ready, just let me know. Does your wife keep up with it?
Yeah, she runs 6 schools in China, a nonprofit organization. We have people in China do that, and then she tutors students Mandarin and English. So students who are in China, she speaks English, and students here, she'll teach them Chinese.
Where did you do her mission for her parents who were mission?
Guangzhou,
Yeah.
that's about 2 hours north of the Hong Kong-China border.
Yeah.
And then her parents, then after she left, went to a place called Guizhou, which is the most impoverished area they were the center in the minority population outside of that. So it's pretty neat. I've been there a number of times. It's fascinating down here. Guangzhou, if you go to China, I would strongly recommend it. It's a third largest city. It makes New York City look small.
Yeah.
It's just amazing just how expansive it is. Advanced to their public transit and everything. Pretty remarkable.
My wife.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Terry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Mayor, looks like we're all ready to go.
Just waiting on Olga and Mike. See, my wife is from Shenyang, which is north of North Korea.
Yeah.
It's the industrial area. You know, she is Han, and then her mom was Han. No, her mom was Manchu. And her dad was Han.
Oh, really?
You know the distinction?
Yeah.
I have a funny story about her great grandfather.
Yeah.
He was actually, you know the Boxer Rebellion? Well, it's actually in Chinese the closed fist rebellion. And we were talking one day. She said, "Oh, my great grandfather was in that." I said, "Really?" I said, "What did you do?" She goes, "He was kind of like Agnew." I said, "What do you mean Agnew?" You know, like planning. Yeah. And what she has is this. So he's captured lot of people follow. Yeah. So she has this book, and during the Cultural Revolution, they were going to burn it. And a guy at the museum who was a devotee of her great-grandfather says, let's keep the book. So, and gives it to her mother, and then she has it. And she looks at me and she says, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but at least we have something for Antiques Roadshow. That's remarkable. Cheers. Amanda and Terry, we're just waiting on a couple more of the council members. We were doing a break between the other commissions. We'll be right with you. Just a couple more minutes, I think, and we'll be okay.
Ladies, can you hear me?
Yes,
Am I supposed to click on anything?
we hear you.
Oh, good.
You are on time and in the right place, and we're just waiting on other people.
Well, you know what? I just got a text, but from the wrong person. Sorry. So how are you today?
Super.
You having a good day?
Yeah, very productive day.
Great. You must have had some really good candidates to interview earlier. That's wonderful.
We did.
That's great.
Consuelo, can you do me a favor and check on Mike real quick? He may not have realized we have 2 more to go.
Is this part of the test?
Consuelo, can you hear me?
Don't actually know who we're waiting on. Are we?
I think we're waiting on Mike Marasco.
Yeah, Consuelo, can you hear me?
That's all right.
Oh, there's...
No, I've been here. I was waiting for the mayor.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. We're all
I'm
back
waiting.
now.
Yeah. We're all here.
All right. With that, let me reconvene.
Me
the
too.
meeting, and we'll put everybody on mute, if you would, please. Okay. We've got 2 more makeup interviews for the Public Arts Commission. Amanda and Terry, what we'll do is we go through one question at a time, followed by some follow-ups. And but before we begin, give everyone a chance to do a 1-minute resume about themselves. We're going to begin with you, Amanda. And when you're ready, why don't you begin? Amanda, can you hear me? Okay, a little technical difficulties. We're going to check on that real quick. Amanda, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Amanda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. We're ready to begin. I don't know if you heard the other part, but we're going to ask each council member will be asking a question and then potentially some follow-up. But before we begin, we're giving each applicant a chance to do a 1-minute interview or 1-minute statement. So we're ready when you are. And I'll give you a little 10 seconds toward the end. Okay?
Okay. Who's going first? Who's going first?
Oh, I'll go first.
No, please.
Do you have an order?
Let's, we want to get Amanda squared away here, okay?
Okay, sorry. Hi there, I'm Amanda Umphrey. I work at Cal State San Marcos. I am their ATI coordinator, so I focus mostly on making sure that students with disabilities get the fair access to content, stuff like that. In my free time, I also have done a lot of art as side jobs. I've done pixel art. I also have done web design, all sorts of fun stuff. I'm classically trained also. Anyway, I am interested in the Public Art Commission so that way I can be a better part of my community, and I think it would be really cool to, have that kind of outreach and make, a true impact in my community. So I'm really excited to see what comes of it, and that is probably not a minute.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll begin our questioning. Mike, you can start out, please.
Mayor, Councilman Marasco had to leave, and he apologizes for not being here.
Okay, with that, Olga, would you mind starting our questioning, please?
Of course. Hello, Amanda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Oh, I'm sorry. My video has to be on too. So thank you for applying for the Arts Commission. I'm glad that you have a chance to interview with us. I actually, I want to know what your perspective is on public murals and how you would use murals and public art as a way to engage and involve new and more sort of broader, expanded community within our city. So one thing you'll note is that it's often the same people that are doing all the stuff. So how would you use art and murals to broaden our reach within our community?
So I am a huge fan of mural art. I constantly taking pictures whenever I'm out and about in the community, so I love that question. For murals, I think they're the most impactful when they're in a surprising space in the community where you turn a corner and you're like, oh my gosh, look at it. And I also personally find murals the most enticing when they're telling a story. So maybe it's someone's personal perspective on life or the history of a town or someone's culture, stuff like that. I like murals too when they're something just pretty to look at, but I like when there's a little bit deeper meaning in it. As for how to kind of engage the community with them, I think very impactful placement around the community is key. I was kind of looking online earlier to see if there was a community map of all of the public arts pieces, and I couldn't quite find exactly what I was looking for, but I would love to kind of see areas that don't have anything and, maybe reaching out to those community members and seeing what speaks to them.
Great. Thank you very much. Consuelo?
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much. So far, I'm really pleased with the comments in your response to Councilmember Diaz. So in your application, you mentioned you want to make Escondido a public art destination in our region.
Yes.
So I know that you're a fan of murals, which is great because I am too. What are some other things that you would do if appointed as an art commissioner to make our city a public art destination?
Ooh, okay. Well, so I went to high school in the Encinitas area. They have lots and lots of murals, mosaics, sculptures, all sorts of stuff. So I'm kind of coming from that perspective. I love when there is a lot of scale that kind of is dramatic for a viewer to look at. Sorry, blinked out there for a second. Anyway, I am envisioning Escondido as, kind of taking some cues from that, that community, which I am already familiar with, and basically, Sorry, I got very nervous all of a sudden. Okay. So for Escondido, I've been here for about 3 years, and I've noticed that there is a really fun kind of artistic culture that is really apparent in like the downtown Grand area. And I think that that is great. And I would love to see that kind of energy throughout the whole community. Escondido is really large, and it is a quite historic city, which is kind of exciting because you could really tap into a lot of stuff like that. As for actual art pieces, I do personally really love murals. I do think that you could look at the history, the diversity of the culture, all of that stuff would be great to feature. But I also like sculptures. So things that, you know, are kinetic, that the youth can come to and interact with, and, you know, things that are approachable and that you can actually touch rather than, you know, have a little partition around and you just kind of admire it with your eyes. I don't know if that fully answered your question, and I feel like I'm starting to go off on a tangent, but I tried my best.
Yeah, no, thank you, Amanda. You did, and really, it was about what do you see as making our city a public art destination, and you did touch on some of those things, and it's apparent to me that you know what you're talking about, and you do bring a lot of experience within just the different art mediums and touching on the things that stand out in Escondido as far as like culture and involving youth. So that was very helpful. Thank you. And I might have another question in the second round.
Of course.
Amanda, if we had a successful public arts program, what in your mind, how would you define that in the sense of what it would do for the community?
Okay. Well, I think one of the key things that I would want to focus on is actually getting artists from the community who might not be as established. I think that could be really exciting, maybe approaching local high schools or even the colleges and seeing if you could do some sort of partnership with some sort of creation. I also know that getting the elementary school age students interested in art is huge. There's so many different benefits for having art in the curriculum. I could see, you know, smaller scale things for smaller children. And then maybe giving a place to, you know, put out an actual piece from, you know, high school students or someone who just has an idea of how to make their community beautiful.
Okay. Olga, follow up? I think you're still muted. There you go.
There, sorry. Slightly different than Zoom, so I'm always searching for the buttons. So Amanda, how would you spread around not only the resources but the effort in terms of public art to make sure that it represents all of the cultures of our city, of the people within our city? I love all art, but sometimes it looks so much the same that I think we need to broaden our subject matter. So do you have any ideas on what we might do that would make, you know, people feel like their perspective, their art, their culture is included in our public art investments?
I mean, that's always something great to strive for, and I definitely have that as a personal goal. Art historically has been a bunch of white men for the most part, at least in the like famous art world. I really think that a community outreach is where you're going to start with that. You're going to get those voices, those stories that, you know, they're out there and we're just not asking for them. And I think that if you did some sort of like small local campaign to say, we have a space to feature your pieces, give us a pitch. And you could do really any kind of medium with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consuelo?
Okay, so very excited and inspired hearing your responses. So I noticed that you work for a college, which is great because that means you have connections to students and we have all ages that go to college, but that you do have connections to young people. What are some ways that you will involve, youth in this process? As you mentioned, it's not something that youth have historically been a part of in the formal art commission process. So how would you help change that and engage more of our young people in our community?
Well, I have a bit of a leg up for working at the university. I do their campus app, so I work fairly heavily with their ASI, their Office of Communications, and a lot of those groups that kind of disseminate information on campus or are directly involved with the student body. So I would definitely kind of reach out to those ties there. Other things that I think I would be able to assist with my university ties, there is the Meryl Goldberg does a art outreach. Art is Opportunity, I think is what it's called. I have to double check that. Anyway, I've helped them with some of their web stuff before to get their content onto the campus website. They have a whole outreach program where they are focusing on elementary school students and really showing the value of art throughout a person's lifetime and the community impact, which is really exciting because she's right there and I have worked with her before. So, you could reach out that way. As for other community areas like schools and stuff, I don't have any kids, so I don't have any ties that way. But I mean, I think the thing is to just ask and put it out there and say, how can we help you? What can we do for you?
Thank you.
Amanda, I'm going to ask my question again a little bit differently. The same question, but maybe a little bit differently. I had the opportunity to get a tour with the airport art commission, and these are actually paid employees. And when I asked them about their program, they said, we want our art to be calming, offer directions, offer clarity. If I were to ask you that question again, and I said to you, what would you want it to do for the city, what words would you use?
I right now would say that I would want to tell the story of the city. Its history. There's a couple pieces here and there that kind of talk about it, like Grape Tea Park has that huge sculpture of the grapes, and that kind of talks about, the region for the produce and stuff that it's known for. But I don't really see any acknowledgement art-wise, at least that I've seen, for the Liseño Indian community that was here originally. That really isn't acknowledged. I think that would be an interesting perspective. Other areas to focus on is that I was doing a little bit of research previously, and the city is very old, like surprisingly old. And all of that culture from the 1800s and stuff, I think could be told in a really interesting way, but in a modern way too. How exactly that would be done, I don't know yet, but I think that would be a fun perspective to explore.
Thank you. Olga, any follow-ups? Consuelo?
No, but thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
I don't have any either. Thank you, Amanda. And with that, we'll move on to you, Terry. And when you're ready, you can start with your 1-minute intro.
Should I leave?
You're muted, Terry.
You can, if you'd like, or you leave. It's up to you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Sorry. Let me try, because I actually got muted by someone. So 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
No.
Terry, can you hear me? All right, I can see your mouth moving, saying I can hear you, but we cannot hear you. And looking at the symbol, you're still muted. So can you unmute yourself, please?
So, and it
All
says
right,
I can you hear me now?
I've got you loud and clear.
Oh, thank goodness. Well, good evening and thank you for having so much interest in all of these commissions and taking the time necessary to finish up with the interviews and continue to show that Escondido is one of the best cities to live in. I've lived here almost 41 years. I worked in special ed, have retired from there. I've volunteered at schools teaching art, doing murals, during individual class lessons. I've also done plays with the school district and the high school previously. And I've worked with youth quite a bit. And one of the ideas that I have is we have so many vacant buildings in Escondido, and it's such a beautiful town, particularly on Grand Avenue. And I would like to see children's art displayed over these windows of these vacant buildings. I have organized a number of events in Escondido, from Red Ribbon to a assembly for the governor for a program I put in place 20 years ago. And I would like to see children express happiness, joy, and hope in our towns over these vacant storefronts, and now obviously boarded up. And that's something that I would like to personally bring.
Terry,
I am
wrap it up for us?
I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. With that, we'll begin our questioning. Consuelo, would you mind beginning, please?
Yes.
Okay, hi Terry. Thank you so much for sticking around and for your patience, because I know you submitted your application a while ago.
Thank you.
Here and staying interested in this. As far as our public commission goes, it seems you're probably very familiar with it because you've been involved for a while. What are some things that you see are lacking in our current public arts commission, and then how would you be helpful in addressing that?
Yes, it's a very good question. I do see displaying children's art lacking. Currently, I am displaying children's art at the San Diego Discovery Museum, and in the past, before they banned art displays at Bank of America. So I would like to see where we could display children's art. And my emphasis has always been for cultural tolerance, and I would like to see us cross over all boundaries with our art. And then also, I see lacking, for me personally, since I have veterans in my family, veteran pavers in a park. And I have an idea off of Grand and Juniper. There is a small, lovely pocket park that has granite for their walkway. And I would like to see us do a fundraiser, and that's one way of paying for this, for the pavers with our veterans and deceased veterans at that park, and use the funds for some sort of plaque that we could have proudly displayed along with the American flag that I think they might have there. So there's two ideas that I would like to see implemented in Escondido. And I would start with what I've always done, which is go to principals and try to work out classrooms that are diverse and collect art with a theme traveling throughout to put up on the window fronts.
Thank you so much for your response. And just wanted to add that I really, having gone to the California Center for the Arts in their museum, I really love when the students display their art. I'm just always inspired and just amazed at the talent that we have here. So thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
Terry, I'll ask you the same question I asked Amanda. Describe for me what you think a successful art program in the city, what it would do for the city. As using the examples from the airport, they use words like calming, offering direction. What do you think a successful art program in the city would do for the city?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. I think what it would do is, particularly during this time, is boost morale and bring life to the city, and hopefully want to bring people to visit the art. And one thing that I would start with slowly would be to do chalk art on the sidewalks, or maybe even on near pocket parks, and bring in artists and also make contests with children, with, of course, their parents' permission, to do chalk art as just an introduction, and make sure that the theme brings in our diverse population. Then the second thing I would do is I would probably, along with other committee members, hopefully we would brainstorm on ideas that we would have that would bring people to our city and excitement back into downtown. And one way to do that is to have art on display on the streets, or if the street's not blocked off, on the sidewalks, where we have local artists displaying their art. You may even want to pick a park to do that. And that would be the beginning testing to see how well we do and what the public is trying to seek too.
Thank you. Hi, Terry. How are you?
Hi, Olga. I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So I'm good. I'm excited about the ideas that you're sharing, and the wheels are turning about, how to incorporate more art as part of our daily city operations. So I had asked the other applicant, Amanda, about murals, but with you, I want to ask you specifically about how to engage, since you worked in the school district, how to engage a diverse set of schools in our art programs. Because right now we do an art program for a water calendar, and some schools participate, and every year it's the same schools, generally charter and private schools. Very few of the traditional public schools have a teacher that will guide the students through this, and I feel like there's a connection that's missing, and it makes me sad. The other thing is, how do we take our arts programming and push it into parts of town that we're not traditionally going to with art? So, for example, there's a lot of pieces in the urban core in downtown Escondido, not so much.
I'm sorry, froze.
I froze. Yeah.
Olga, I'm sorry, you froze. Particular parts of town is where we ended.
So there are areas of our city where we haven't made any investment in public art. We haven't even tried. So it's something about your comments in terms of bringing a variety of students in make me feel like you would have that mindset to go into areas where there is no art and make sure that we are sharing art to the community. So the two things, how do we bring in a cross-section of schools when we do offer an activity, and how would you go into a part of a city and say, we need art here because there isn't any?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and you're absolutely right, because I do look at those calendars and it's always the same schools, and it doesn't have the cross diversity that we're looking for that represents Escondido. I have had the opportunity to go to many schools in Escondido, matter of fact, all of them, to do different training programs. And it's really not that difficult to do. You have to, I would probably come up with a plan to do art. I'll give you an example. When we did the torch run, which was many, many years ago, I wanted to represent all of Escondido rather than just Rock Spring School. And so I went to each school and got the kids to do handprints in yellow, orange, and red to add to the Olympic torch. I feel very definitely committed to making sure we include all of our population. And as you know, it's very diverse. So the first step would be to make contacts with people I know at the school district and have a proposal of doing a art project where we could bring that into display and have a cross-section of students. Since I've lived all over the world, I know how important it is to have that acceptance and exposure to different communities, different thoughts, different principles. And I think it is important, and I think it is missing in Escondido. to be honest with you, Olga.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great. Ms. Rowell, follow-up?
Sure. Well, I really like your energy and your ideas. I like that you already have ideas that you want to implement. I remember, let's see, in your application, you mentioned that I don't know if you volunteer or you work for the Children's Discovery Museum.
Yes.
Are you able to implement some of your ideas, or have you been able to implement some of the ideas that you mentioned through those, channels?
Make sure I understand the question, but stop me if I don't. What I did was I took, I'll start off, it's scarecrows from around the world. And it takes you from November all the way through December. And it's actually scarecrows that are in their traditional costumes. No two countries are usually cited twice. And I try to find out with the Discovery Museum what their theme is. They usually have a country as a theme. So I make sure I have a boy and girl scarecrow. The students decorate the scarecrows in a costume. They have a master of it. And then they have to draw that onto their scarecrows. And then the scarecrows, hopefully, when they're displayed, can joint arms. Sometimes they can't. And then the students have to search the history on their country, and it's very diverse. So that is an idea that I would have to implement, where the students have an opportunity to have diversity, and implementing that is, once again, through the district office. You would have to get permission to do this. But my name has been attached to a program called SAVE, where we saved energy, and the governor came to our school for the program. So I'm hoping, I still have contacts with the district. And so it just takes stepping out and wanting to make sure that people recognize the diversity here and celebrate it too. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, Terry, my specific question was more to, I mean, that was helpful, but just some of the ideas that you've talked about, I feel like you may be able to also implement those, not just as a commissioner, but as, someone who is a coordinator between the museum and the schools. Do you see that that is an opportunity, whether or not you get on the commission, that you would be able to explore some of these ideas through the channels and the relationships that you already have?
I believe so. With the Discovery Museum, I actually approached them as a volunteer over at my grandson's school. And I didn't have the district behind me at that point, except for the school teacher. And so I did a proposal to them on diversity, and they accepted it, and to the point that every year and every month they want a display of art. And so I feel that that was successful in how it was approached. And of course, the teacher said yes, and I gave notice to the principal. I hope that answered it, but I like creating programs.
Yeah.
That's what I do, and I love it, to be honest with you.
Yes, thank you. That does answer my question. Thank you so much for the example.
You're welcome.
Terry, I'm going to steal some of the words from my colleagues, but when I think of a successful program, the words that come to mind is it brings the community pride, it brings its history, it brings education, it brings unity, even economic development. And I feel you've touched on all of those in your ideas, from something as simple as chalk to connecting to our history and recognizing our diversity. So I very much appreciate your thoughts and your willingness to volunteer. With that, I'm going to do one more round with the council to see if there's any follow-up questions, and I'll start with you, Olga. Anything?
Yes, actually, because I think you can do this. For so many years, Escondido City Hall puts up a holiday tree, Christmas tree. And it's always very simply decorated, usually a giant bow and some lights. And I've always found it to look very bland. So one of the ideas I would love to see pursued if you make your way onto this commission is perhaps having students design ornaments every year with a theme on our tree. And I just feel like you're the person that could make that happen, because I've had this idea that I've never made happen because I don't know how. But I just feel like you would run with that, and our tree would be much more of a community tree than, a fire retardant, holiday, pop-up tree. So it's less a question and more an idea that I would love to be invited back to City Hall sometime when you've accomplished that.
Well, first of all, thank you. I think it's a fabulous idea. And I am a big proponent of children's art. I had an art school for 14 years, and I've always encouraged children to draw and be free and happy about it. And to produce an ornament that's on display would be incredible. And so would you want those made out of paper mache, or would you care? Do you want them to be permanent or temporary? Do you want them to be used every year, stored and put away?
I think every year we should make new ones, because then you can keep a new set of students, right? Maybe it's third grade, and every third grade student in Escondido makes an ornament, and maybe through the commission we buy them the supplies and they do it at school. Anyway, I've never really known where to place that idea, but in hearing you today, I found a place. So I'm putting more energy on it too.
Good. Well, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm very excited about it. And some schools have a lot of supplies, and some schools have less. So some schools may be able to provide, maybe through PTA fundings, but a lot of the schools in Escondido can't. So we'll figure that out. And I think your idea of doing by grade level is great. We have 21 schools, and if each student, you would have a tremendous amount. So how tall is this tree? I can't remember.
It is a very big tree. In City Hall, there's a staircase between the planning department and the engineering department, I think. And there's a double stairwell that goes upstairs to where the city council is. Yeah. In that lobby, that rotunda, is where we put a tree that I think is probably 15 feet tall.
Great. We'll work that out. I think it's fabulous. Good. All right. Well, I'll ask you more questions some other time. Sorry. And may I tell the mayor that I can't see him on when he comes on to speak?
You're not missing
me. I'm not missing. We're doing just a big
move on to final questions from Consuelo. Do you have any final questions?
Just a comment. I've never seen Councilmember Diaz so giddy.
I literally love Christmas.
It's just over here, it's just funny, and I love it. I love it. She's so giddy. But yeah, thank you so much for Terry, for applying the high energy that you bring, and for sharing your great ideas with us. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and it's been a pleasure interviewing with all of you. And like you said, not seeing the mayor's face, I really wanted to see him again. You're just a bee on the screen, Mayor.
Okay. Well, I'm here, and I again, I'm going to echo my colleagues' comments. I really appreciate your energy. You've got me excited about the possibilities again. So,
good.
And with that, just to let you know, we're going to make our decision on the 24th. And what I'm going to do is ask the city clerk to send us, all the council members, a list of all the names on the boards and the commissions, show the repeat of the vacancies to make it very clear, and then also a list of who applied. And then I'd also like to say to the council members that if you see on some of the commissions, we had a lot of incumbents, and if you would rather leave it gapped than reappoint an incumbent, just please notify, put that on there so that we could put it gapped, and then maybe we could go out and do it. We're not obligated to put somebody back on there, so we could go back out and solicit, do another solicitation for applicants if you want to do that. Just let me know when you send that in. And with that, thank you all very much. Anybody who's still listening,
Thank you.
And the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.